Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. Amazon and BigCommerce, the e-commerce platform, recently done a deal which will allow BigCommerce sellers to use Amazon's logistics services even if they're not selling on Amazon.com. Marek, you've been saying for ages that it's inevitable that Amazon will open up logistics networks to other players. Why have you been saying that? What's the context for that? Because it's not unprecedented, shall we say?
Economies of scale, Ian. I think if you look at it, then what is the difference between the marketplace where Amazon decided to let competitors sell in order to get extra volume, customer choice, economies of scale? What's the difference here? Same story. Probably even it makes more sense because they can use third parties to subsidize or to, should we say, at least to fill the routes that are not running at capacity.
There was some suggestion that logistics and delivery is a big cost center for Amazon. So if it's able to get more volume, will there be more economies of scale? Will it be less of a cost center for Amazon?
There are very few areas that are so dependent on scale as the last mile, particularly when you look at things like lockers or PUDOs. And for that reason, I think capacity scale is an issue. And for me, it doesn't surprise me at all. You know, we've been talking about this before. It wasn't if, but when. And guess what? For all of the legacy carriers out there who are wondering, when is it coming? It's just come. So I think Amazon is now a direct competitor. There can be no doubt. And it's time for everybody else to pull their socks up.
I thought you were going to say something else when you said pull. Now, that's maybe because I'm just an Australian and we think like that. Now, I guess if you're an e-commerce seller, though, you'd maybe have some questions about putting your logistics in Amazon's hands because, and here's why, people have forgotten about this, but last April, so right the first wave of the pandemic, Amazon halted its delivery service for non-Amazon packages. That was the shipping service was then known as Amazon Shipping, and they paused it. Now, if you've committed volume to them, and all of a sudden Amazon says, "Oops, we're going to prioritize our own parcels over yours," and you're scrambling to do a deal. I mean, if you're in the USA, you'll say, well, I've got to go to UPS or FedEx or the Postal Service or a regional carrier. What would those e-commerce merchants be thinking? Bearing in mind, just to like finish off this thought bubble, that BigCommerce is not just in the USA, it's active in Europe as well. In fact, last week, I think it announced it's expanding into France, Italy and the Netherlands. So when it comes to explain it, Marek, what would you say if you're an e-commerce shipper in this respect?
First of all, any smart e-commerce shipper is going to have several alternatives. And we need to be fair, it wasn't just Amazon who closed the doors when they didn't have capacity.
This is true.
So I think any smart e-commerce player will have alternative suppliers. Amazon will be one of them. Makes sense as long as you understand the strengths and weaknesses of that solution. One of the weaknesses being that Amazon will always treat its customers first. Also, I think depends on the quality of the SLA you have with Amazon. Does it make sense? My view is sometimes it's going to make good financial sense, good customer service sense. And on that basis, it's worth looking at it. And, you know, as we discussed earlier, no one is perfect. The legacy carriers themselves can also say, sorry, we don't have capacity.
And we know that at the end of last year, some of them were actually saying no to new customers because they wanted to be able to give the volume to their existing customers. So the need is clearly out there for capacity, but not just in the last mile by the sounds of it, Marek. It's also just being able to pick up from fulfillment centers, the middle mile and all of that. Could, in some sense, Amazon be contributing to the solution here to actually opening up its own networks to other e-commerce sellers?
My view is that one of the things that COVID has done is it's speeded up the move towards the sharing economy. That's what this is all about. And more players are going to have to look at cooperating, partnering, leveraging other people's assets. As Amazon does, by the way, because a lot of Amazon logistics is actually based upon third-party DSPs or delivery service providers, third-party PUDO networks, third-party locker networks. So,
and not to mention aircraft.
Absolutely. So I think that's the way things are going to go. And those who don't leverage that opportunity will miss out. Although, of course, you need to have backup options, as you'd need to do with any supplier.
One of the things that's been emphasised by other commentators on this particular matter is that Amazon, for example, developed AWS for itself and then opened up its online services to others. It developed the marketplace, and how many times have I heard you talk about how the marketplace really only took off when, well, actually, Matt, I'll let you briefly explain what sort of this idea of opening up the marketplace and what it meant for Amazon, and then what that sort of means for it opening up its logistics network.
For those of you who have been fortunate enough to participate in our Amazon workshop, then you'll remember this, Ian. One of the slides is the flywheel. I call it Jeff's flywheel. And actually the flywheel is all about, generating economies of scale, customer-centric features because of that volume. And the way that happened, one of the first things was the decision to open up the marketplace to have not just your own suppliers, but competitors, suppliers, competitors themselves selling products, which gave much more choice. So I think that's fundamental, and it's no different really to this. So if anyone's interested, go online, write Amazon Flywheel, Jeff's Flywheel. You'll see this. Even better, join the Last Mile Profits workshop on this subject. And then I think you'll get a good feeling for how this works.
I'll put a link to our workshop on this down below. So if you want us to explain this in detail for your company or for your clients, we'll do so. So just have a look down below. I'm pointing down here. It'll be down there somewhere. the link to this. With the time we have left, Mark, let's just quickly look at this from a couple of other perspectives. This might concern the carriers, like the FedEx and UPS, regional carriers, etc. It might also concern, say, the likes of Walmart that have been building up their own marketplace and their own logistics networks. So maybe we'll start with Walmart first of all. If you're on the board or you're advising Walmart, would there be anything in particular you'd say to have a look at right now?
Shamelessly copy Amazon's strategy.
Yeah. Shamelessly copy Amazon's strategy. There we go. So that's, you have to understand it first of all, though, I suppose, Marek.
Absolutely. But I think, coming back to the subject matter of today's videocast, what this is about is saying, okay, open up your network, leverage the benefits of scale, and don't be myopic. And by the way, same with the carriers, because you mentioned the carriers, exactly the same story. The carriers that don't get it, that the world's changing and they need to start working together, are going to be the carriers that are left by the wayside. This idea of, there were people a few years ago calling it co-opetition. It's the idea of acknowledging that there are times when you'll actually need to work with your competitors. Now, there are anti-cartel laws in some countries that mean you have to tread carefully there. But if you've got a competitor that can offer a service that you can't, then should you partner? And how would that work? Oh, Marek, that's probably a topic for a whole other video, but we're not going to go into it. Ian, before we move on, I will just say one thing. If you think about it, it's already happening. Look at bank automatic teller machines. Huge networks where banks participate, work together. Credit cards, Visa and MasterCard cover pretty much every bank in the spectrum. Well, maybe there's a small number that have American Express or something else. So it's already there in other industries.
Bank interchange fees, or whatever you want to call them, FPOS interchange fees for those of you in Australia. So the fees exist, and the ATM fees, which can be exorbitant, which of course are paid by the consumer, which is the interesting thing about it. That's an interesting one. And we've run out of time. So there we go. Comment below. Is this basically just an attempt to mimic the ATM network, or is Amazon really leveraging its strengths? Comment below. Interested to hear what people have to say. Marek Krzyzewski, thanks for being part of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everybody.